plagues that Moses called down on the Pharaoh, and of course one of the plagues was a plague of frogs.
Yeah.
And so
Okay, so the frog is a perfect liminal character, because the frog, I think you tweeted about this as well. The frog lives both in water and on land, and so it has a monstrous characteristic that it can cross. It's one of those things that crosses over between worlds. And so you see that in the stories, like the story of the frog and the princess is a perfect example, and it relates to the Pinocchio story that we talked about earlier. So a princess goes to a pond. She's playing with her favorite thing, which is this golden ball, and so she drops the ball in the water.
that just to mention something, that golden ball is the same thing as the snitch that Harry Potter chases in the Quidditch games in Harry Potter. And it's funny because inside the snitch is actually part of Voldemort's soul, right? So that's part of the soul of evil that's inside the golden ball. And the golden ball in Harry Potter has wings, which makes it a round chaos. Technically speaking, it's an alchemical symbol. And the round chaos is a mercurial symbol. And the spirit Mercury is an emissary of the gods. And so the gods are speaking to you when anything flickers in front of you and captures your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Quidditch game, the person who follows what captures his attention is the seeker, and also the person who wins not so much the game, but the meta game.
What's important, I think, in this story is that the ball is the most important thing.
Right. That's why it's golden. It's like
right, that's
the
why
sun.
it's golden. So for her, it's the idea that it is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So she drops this ball in the water. It gets lost. So she loses the most important thing. It falls into chaos.
Right. So that's the death of God for all intents and purposes.
Or just the idea of the loss of innocence, or whatever you think about it in terms of the loss of the most important thing. And so this frog appears and says, I can go get your ball if you promise something for me. And so the promise is that she will bring the frog with her into her castle, let the frog eat with her, and then let the frog sleep in her bed. Okay,
right.
So we've got those two things, food and sex. We talked about before as well. So the frog goes down into the water and then brings up the most important thing, and the princess is forced to accept this frog in her. She doesn't want to. Like, she's very annoyed that she has to let the frog into her house, eat from her plate, and then finally into her bed. But by doing that, the frog, of course, transforms into a prince. Here you have this idea that we talked about before, where the most important thing goes out into chaos, and whatever can bring it back, right? Whatever can bring it back to us can be tamed and can enter into the world, can find its place into the world,
and maybe even turns into the thing of the highest value.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's something for people to really think about marriages, for example. So, people are always, and I think this is part of the profound immaturity of our culture. People are always running around waiting to find the perfect person who's perfect for them. And so, one thing you might think is that if you ever found the perfect person, they would run away from you screaming immediately. So that perfection is something that you have to build within a relationship. And so you accept the other person, so to speak, warts and all, and hope that they do the same to you, and swear that you won't run from each other. And then as a consequence of that, you can engage in a mutual process of transformation that emerges as a consequence of telling the truth and having a truthful relationship. And then as a consequence of that, the transformation can take place. And you might start with a frog, but maybe you end up with a prince. So
like we talked about the idea that this is the structure of the world, and so it happens as much on a personal level as it does on a social level, on a bigger sense. So just a little hint, we talked about before the story of Abraham and the three angels coming and announcing the birth of Abraham's son. Well, in the story of Sleeping Beauty, that's exactly what happens. The queen goes to the pond, and there, lo and behold, is a talking frog. And the frog is the one who announces to the queen that she will have a child, the most beautiful child in the world. And so, again, here is this idea of something coming from chaos.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting because, in the diagrams in my book, in Maps of Meaning, one of the diagrams is an egg shape that is the chaos into which things plunge. But chaos is an absolute state in some sense. It's the state of the unknown as such. And you never see the unknown as such. You always see something that's partly known and partly unknown.
Yeah.
And that's what the frog is sitting on the edge of the pond. The frog enables you. So the frog is an emissary of chaos, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
And you only meet an emissary of chaos. You never meet chaos because it's
non-existence. It's
right.
It's non-being. It's below being, if you will.
Right, exactly.
And so now this thing, like, two things. One is interesting is that Kermit the Frog is the same thing, because Kermit is a host. He's a host on a show, and so what he does is he transitions. He's the transition between different worlds. So you have an act, and then you have this transitional figure which appears, and then you have another act. And so that's the role that Kermit the Frog plays on the Muppet Show.